The path takes you farther from the village, where homes fade into clusters of palms and low shrubs. The sky above has turned a pale blue, cloudless and vast, like an endless dome cupping the world. You follow your guide along a narrow track, etched into the landscape by centuries of feet and hooves. Eventually, he leads you to another dome, but this one is different. It's older, with deeper cracks in its surface and vines creeping up one side like nature's slow applause. The entrance is lower, and the air feels even more solemn here, like you've arrived at the oldest part of a temple, or maybe a very polite tomb. You duck inside and your footsteps echo faintly. This yakchol isn't just a place for storing ice, it feels like a place for storing stories. Your guide lights a small oil lamp and raises it slowly. The walls flicker to life with ancient marks, not writing but carvings, symbols, diagrams, faded maps. Someone once etched instructions here, or maybe blessings. Or maybe they were just bored during a long ice harvest. In the center of the dome, there's a shallow platform with an indentation. Your guide gently taps it. This, he says, was the seat of the ice master. You blink. The what? Apparently, the production and preservation of ice in ancient Persia was so complex, so essential, that entire teams were devoted to managing it, led by a single person responsible for timing the freezing, calculating the angles of sun and shadow, judging the air's thickness. The ice master didn't just manage water, he managed seasons. You sit down where the ice master once did, and can't help but feel a little important, even if you're wearing sandals and still smell faintly like camel. Your guide pulls out a long wooden stick, a replica, he says, of what the ice master once used to measure the depth and clarity of the ice. The original tool was probably buried with its owner, or snapped during some particularly ambitious freeze. He demonstrates how the stick would be lowered into the pit, then rotated slowly to test for cracks. If the sound it made was tock, it was good. If it made a dull thub, something was wrong. You try it yourself and smile when you hear the tiniest, most satisfying tock. Even now you're learning to speak the language of ancient cold. Outside, the heat begins to rise, but in here, surrounded by mud brick and memory, the air stays still and chilled. You can almost hear whispers, the murmur of past winters, of long-ago snow carried down mountains in camel caravans wrapped in wool and hope. That's right. The ancient Persians didn't always rely on desert ice ponds. When snow was plentiful in the nearby Alborz mountains, they'd harvest it, compact it, and send it down in blocks wrapped in layers of straw and sheepskin. These caravans would travel mostly by night, the snow packed tight like a sleeping baby, rocked gently across dunes and over salt flats. You can picture it now, a procession of camels glowing faintly under the stars, each carrying cargo colder than the night around them. And in the stillness of that journey, there's something sacred, a pilgrimage of frost. Some historians still debate how often this snow harvesting method was used. Was it a rare treat for royalty or a common practice in mountain-adjacent towns? The records are sparse, like footprints in sand after a strong wind. But the idea of it, of bundling winter and carrying it to summer, stays with you. You step back outside, where the sun now rules the sky again. The dome behind you recedes, into the ground like a buried whisper. You pass a caravan yard on your way back, quiet now, but you can almost hear the clang of tools, the soft bray of camels, the swish of straw-wrapped snow hitting the earth. There's even an old harness leaning against a post, its leather faded, its buckles still faintly gleaming. You imagine the men who tied those bundles of ice so carefully, knowing that if they failed, their village would face a long, hot season, with nothing cool to drink, and that thought, the vulnerability, the fragility of cold, somehow makes the whole effort feel even more heroic, because anyone can survive heat with technology. But preserving winter with only wool, patience and geometry, now that's real magic. You pause under the shade of a date palm, feeling the contrast again, the heat pressing in, the memory of coolness behind you, and slowly your body begins to lean into that drowsy rhythm again, the kind of calm you only get when heat and cold exist in balance, when effort meets elegance, and when even the desert learns to sigh. You sit down in the sand. It's warm, but not unfriendly. Your eyes flutter shut once more. The wind has shifted when you open your eyes again, carrying with it a hint of something sweet. Not flowers, those are rare out here, but something richer, more indulgent. It smells faintly of honey, rosewater, and cold. You follow your nose through a shaded alley where woven canopies stretch overhead, filtering the light into soft golden webs. The air is cooler here, not because of engineering this time, but because you've entered a part of town reserved for a very specific purpose: dessert. Your guide chuckles softly as you walk beside him. Now that we've chilled the ice, he says, it's time to do something delicious with it. He leads you into a courtyard bustling with quiet activity. There are women seated in circles around wide copper bowls, men tending tiny braziers, and children running with trays of crushed petals. You realize you've walked into what might be the ancient Persian equivalent of a luxury popsicle factory. At the center, beneath a fig tree, is a tall, polished urn. It's surrounded by ceramic jugs and brass scoops. Your guide dips one into the urn and hands you a small cup. You take a sip. It's icy cold, perfumed with rose and saffron. Sweet, but not heavy. You blink in surprise. This is faluda, a kind of ancient sorbet made with vermicelli-like rice noodles, chilled with snow or ice, flavored with lime and rosewater. Think slushy meets poetry. You're not sure whether to drink it or write a love song about it. This was the kind of treat once served in royal courts, at summer banquets beneath silk canopies, as dancers moved and lutes played, and everyone pretended it wasn't 41 degrees outside. A scoop of ice and a splash of rosewater could turn an entire afternoon into a performance. And the best part? You didn't have to be royalty to get a taste. Many towns, especially those with access to mountain snow or a nearby yakchal, had communal ice stores reserved for making these desserts during festivals. The people would gather, scoop ice from straw-lined pits, and create their own little pieces of luxury. You watch as a young woman carefully sprinkles dried barberries onto a bowl of crushed ice, humming softly to herself. A boy nearby is carving designs into an ice shard with the focus of a sculptor. Another child is just licking a chunk of snow like it's a forbidden fruit. Some historians still argue over the origins of Persian iced desserts, whether faluda came before or after Indian kulfi, or whether the ancient Romans really had something similar. But everyone agrees on one thing: the Persians took their cold treat seriously. Your guide hands you another bowl, this one with a swirl of syrup made from sour cherries and pomegranate molasses. You take a bite. It's tart, cool, and oddly emotional, like your taste buds just remembered something beautiful from a dream. In the corner, a group of elders sit on cushions, telling stories of banquets long past. One gestures wildly, describing the time a young prince tried to impress a visiting diplomat by serving ice carved into the shape of a lion. The diplomat mistook it for a sculpture and tried to touch it, only for the lion's nose to melt onto his hand. Laughter roars from the group. You sit down beside them, bowl in hand, heart softening like sorbet in the sun. Because what's ice, really, if not a way to hold on to fleeting things? Coldness that disappears the moment you notice. Sweetness that lives only in the moment it touches your tongue. Entire afternoons spent chasing something that vanishes on contact, but still leaves you smiling. A small child plops down beside you, offering a sticky palm of syrup-soaked ice. You take it. It drips down your fingers. And somehow, that's perfect. The fig tree overhead rustles gently. Sunlight flickers like a lazy metronome. Somewhere someone is crushing cardamom with a stone, and you feel it again, that peace. That old, slow, ancient peace, the kind that isn't rushed, the kind that knows melting is part of the process. You lean back against a warm wall, watching. Your dessert turn from slush to water, and you let it. Because here even the melting feels sacred. Your eyes close once more, the scent of rosewater lingering in the air. The breeze carries a lullaby of soft laughter, sugar and snow, and you drift. The sun is higher now, casting golden halos over the village's mud-brick walls, and yet, impossibly, you feel cool. Not cold, not refrigerated, just cool. Like you've stepped into the shade of a memory, or into the long exhale of someone who has nothing left to prove. Your guide, who now feels more like an old friend than a stranger, gestures for you to follow him out of the courtyard, down a narrow alley, and past a row of half-buried stone steps. "It's time," he says. "You met the first Yakchal." You blink. The first. He nods with a smile, and you keep walking. Eventually, the sand gives way to packed clay, and then to a broad clearing. Rising from the center is a structure, like the others, dome-shaped, unassuming, but this one is surrounded by broken pottery, fragments of brick, and the silent hush of reverence. This is not just old. This is origin story old. You approach slowly, feeling the shift in air. The silence gets heavier, like even sound is holding its breath. The dome isn't perfectly round anymore. Time has softened its edges. The clay has weathered to a muted pinkish tan, as though the structure has been blushing for 2,000 years, but it still stands. Your guide places a hand on the dome and closes his eyes for a moment. "This," he says, "was the first one we know of, the one that taught the rest." You walk around it slowly. At its base there's an ancient inscription, not words, but lines etched like ripples. The oldest diagrams were simple. A hole in the ground, a conical cover, straw, ice. But somehow it worked. And it worked so well, they never stopped. This very Yakchal, believed to be over 2 millennia old, is said to have cooled water for an entire district of a now lost city. You try to imagine it. Women carrying jugs, boys hauling baskets of ice, elders sitting under awnings sipping cold plum juice with that wise, slow nod only old people can pull off. Some historians still debate whether this was truly the first Yakchal, or merely the oldest one we've found. Others point to structures in present-day Afghanistan or eastern Iran. But even if this wasn't the first built, it was certainly the first that people couldn't forget. You descend a narrow ramp that curves into the dome's foundation. It's cooler here, much cooler. You can see the circular base where ice would have been stored. There's a worn groove along the wall, where countless hands might have passed, steadying themselves as they carried buckets or dreams. A clay jar sits in the center, cracked but whole, as if the earth itself decided to preserve this one thing. Your guide lifts the lid gently, and inside you see nothing, and yet everything, because it isn't just the ice that was stored here. It was the knowledge of how to make it last. This was a place where method was sacred, where design was holy, where coldness was a kind of wisdom. You run your fingers along the inside wall. The plaster is still smooth in places. Sarouj, that ancient, miraculous mixture, feels almost soft, like it was waiting to be touched again. You whisper, "Thank you." Not sure why, but it feels right. You climb back up into the daylight. Your guide is quiet for a long time. Then he says, "They say the man who built this Yakchal never once felt summer again. Not fully. The dome held a part of him." You wonder if that's metaphor, or if in some deeply poetic Persian way it's actually true. He continues, "He passed it on to his son, and that son to his daughter, and so it went. Generation after generation, each one adding a new trick, a better curve, a smarter angle, until it became what you see today." You look around. The descendants of this dome dot the land. Some are larger, some more elaborate, but none more quiet than this one, none more certain. Because this is where the idea of taming heat with earth was born, and now as you stand in the long shadow of the first Yakchal, you feel it again. That ancient stillness, not just physical but mental. The stillness that comes from knowing someone long before you solved a problem you didn't even know you had, and suddenly your body understands. It slows. Your breath deepens. Your thoughts stretch and unravel like soft thread. The dome watches over you, calm and cool and patient, and somewhere far away, a child dips their fingers into cold water and doesn't know they're part of a miracle. Not a loud, dramatic miracle, just a quiet one, like a whisper in a desert that never needed to shout. You sit in the dust beside the dome, feeling time coil gently around you like shade, and you close your eyes again, letting the silence melt into your skin. You wake to the sound of bells, not the harsh clang of alarm, but soft, distant chimes, like wind brushing over bronze. The kind of sound that makes you forget whether you're dreaming or remembering. You sit up slowly, the earth warm beneath you, and realize the chimes are tied to a camel's neck. A caravan is passing nearby, slow, deliberate, ancient. The animals move in a straight line like they've done this 100 lifetimes before, and maybe they have. Your guide stands beside you, shielding his eyes against the sun. "You've seen how the ice is made," he says. "Now see how it moves." You join him as he walks toward the caravan. The camels are taller than you remember, towering with the kind of indifference only desert creatures can afford. Each one carries bundles wrapped tightly in thick wool and straw mats, held down by leather straps. Inside those bundles, ice. Heavy blocks of it harvested at night, packed before sunrise and now making their slow pilgrimage across the burning plain. You blink. In this heat, your guide smiles. It's not about speed. It's about ceiling and shade and knowing when to rest. The caravan leader offers you a drink, cool water from a goatskin bag that's been kept in the shade beneath a camel's belly. You take a sip, and again it's not cold like a modern fridge, but cool in a way that feels earned. You walk with the caravan for a while, listening to the steady rhythm of hooves on sand, the occasional grunt of a tired animal, and the whisper of wind brushing across dunes. There's something almost meditative about it, like a moving monastery. Each camel carries not just ice, but the weight of hundreds of calculations. How thick the wrapping should be, how much salt to mix in the D's. Straw, how long to rest at midday, these are not accidents. These are lessons passed from father to son, from mother to daughter, whispered between tired feet and sunburnt shoulders. Some historians still argue over whether these ice caravans were regular or rare, whether they served kings or commoners. But walking here, next to the creaking leather straps and the gentle sway of camel hips, you understand it was more than that. This was trust. Trust that the snow from the mountains would survive the desert. That summer could be softened, that a block of cold carried with care could become a kind of hope. You reach a resting point, a palm oasis with a few shallow pools and a tent already set up for shade. The camels kneel gratefully and the handlers begin unpacking the ice. You watch as they peel away the layers, wool, straw, canvas, until finally the cold glints through. It's beautiful, not dramatic, just there. A quiet defiance against the sun. They place the ice in clay jars, then surround them with damp cloth and bury them halfway in the sand. The wind helps with the rest. Before long, the inside of the tent feels almost cool, like someone whispered. A spell over the place. You sit beneath the woven shade, eating dates and sipping rosewater cooled by the journey itself. One of the younger caravanners begins to tell a story, how his grandfather once lost a shipment of ice to a sudden sandstorm, only to find it again 2 days later, still mostly intact, buried beneath the drift. He swears the ice tasted better after the delay. Another man claims his uncle could tell the mountain origin of any block just by licking it. "This is Alborz," he'd say, "not Zagros. Zagros tastes sharper. Everyone laughs, and you join them. You lean back, watching the sky shimmer with heat and stories, and you start to understand something important. The journey was never just about transporting ice. It was about carrying a miracle, carefully, quietly, from one world to another, from winter to summer, from mountaintop to market. You lie down on a woven mat as a camel sighs nearby. The breeze through the tent smells of palm leaves and melting ice. You close your eyes, because in this world and where cold moves slowly across fire, even sleep feels sacred. The wind changes again. This time it brings the scent of citrus, sharp, clean and alive. You stir beneath the tent, eyes opening just enough to see that the caravan has stopped beside an orchard. Lemons, pomegranates, oranges heavy on the branch. Their skins gleam like polished coins under the morning light, and at the far end of the grove, shaded by trellised vines, is something that looks almost out of place. A low marble table, curved like a crescent moon, surrounded by stools, carved from stone. On the table rest bowls of crushed ice fruit and tiny ceramic pitchers, filled with syrups in colors that shimmer like jewels, saffron yellow, tamarind brown, mulberry black. Your guide appears again, still smiling, always arriving when you Forget you're looking for him. Welcome, he says, to the court of cold. You follow him into the grove. The air here is cooler, and not just because of the trees. There's a sense of ceremony to it, as if each citrus tree has been trained in etiquette, as if the breeze rehearses its timing. Here in the shaded hush of Persian gardens, ice became more than preservation. It became presentation. At this table, nobles and poets, scholars and generals once gathered to indulge in what was, and still is, one of the most elegant expressions of human stubbornness, a cold dish in a hot place. Someone hands you a silver spoon. It's old, dented, but still gleams like it remembers glory. You dip it into one of the bowls, shaved ice topped with sour cherry syrup and crushed dried rose petals. It tastes like the color red dreaming of winter. Another bowl is passed to you, thin slivers of orange peel preserved in honey laid over snow. It's bitter and sweet and cold and delicate, like a thought you almost had but lost too soon. Across the table, a storyteller is reciting verses by Hafez, not loudly, not theatrically, just gently, like the words are being spoken to the fruit. You only catch one line. Even the sun, when tired, will rest its lips upon the pomegranate. You smile into your dessert. Of course it would. You're told that these kinds of gatherings were once common in royal gardens. Entire evenings, dedicated not to war or trade or politics, but to taste, to texture, to the subtle, fleeting moment when cold meets tongue and poetry meets the palate. Some historians still debate whether these gatherings were reserved for the elite or if similar practices existed among the merchant class in their own more modest gardens. But whether on marble or clay, the joy was the same. Cold fruit under warm skies. You sip from a tiny porcelain cup filled with orange blossom syrup over ice. It's enough to make your teeth hum softly. A woman across the table offers you a date stuffed with almond and drizzled with lemon juice. You nod in thanks and eat it slowly. It tastes like memory wrapped in sweetness. The trees around you rustle, with the low music of wind and cicadas. Somewhere water is trickling, perhaps from a hidden fountain, or maybe just someone rinsing a bowl. You glance up and see one of the caravan camels staring into the orchard like it stumbled into a dream. You feel the same because this moment, this grove, this table, this impossible luxury of ice among citrus, feels outside of time. As if it could have happened 1,000 years ago, or tomorrow, or in a dream you haven't had yet. Your guide clinks his cup against yours. To the genius of indulgence, he says. To the engineers of flavor. You laugh and sip and let the chill curl behind your ears, across your neck, down your spine, and then you feel it again. That heaviness in your eyelids. That full-body softness that says, you've eaten well, you've listened deeply, you've rested where kings once sat. So you recline beneath the trees, letting dappled light flicker across your face, and you drift. Because some histories aren't meant to be studied. They're meant to be tasted and then slept off in the shade.